It's a pleasure to be here. Today I'm going to be talking about human behavior. I'm an experimental economist, and I talk through stories, through experiments. So today I'm going to try to show you a few stories that hopefully will resonate with you a little bit. Have you ever been in the following situation? You're driving down the road, you're excited about the drive, you hear your favorite song on the radio, and you pump up the volume and you go, "This is fantastic." All of a sudden, it starts raining and you go, "Oh my God, turn off the radio because I can't see." Well, that happens to us because we have something in the brain with limited resources. So our brain has this mental inhibition hypothesis, which essentially states that our brains have limited resources that we can devote cognitive abilities. And so it's not that you can't see, but it is the fact that because you have these limited resources, once they're allocated to a task, that leaves less resources available to other tasks. And this is crucial because that means that while you think you have a focal situation preparing for the CFA or the CFP exams, and you're fully concentrated on that leave less resources available for you to make decisions in many other domains. And that sometimes these other domains have profound consequences to your waste, to your health, and to everything that you do around you in social relationship with other people. Now, this is not something that is your fault. It's natural evolution. There is a reason why the brain works like that. It's almost like a computer that works in a serial mode only, where you devote resources to a task, and then you have little resources for something else. From an evolutionary perspective, think about early humans in the savannah. When there was a predator or some sort of a danger, they had to be able to shut the brain completely down and devote every single cognitive ability in your brain to get out of the trouble. Now, today, that might be an interaction with somebody else. That trouble could have a different meaning today, but the principle is exactly the same. So this allows humans to be able to devote resources to the most immediate fire. Now, your clients and you yourselves might be experiencing some of these constraints in that behavior. So what can you do to facilitate this process and to make sure that people have enough of a cushion to be able to process all the complexity in the information that we're providing? Is that you package it in a way that it makes it simpler for them. Now, this impacts everybody. And when it comes to financial resources, this is an experiment that is very fascinating to me. Because in this experiment, Manny and her colleagues look at the potential situation that you're going to see here. They asked participants to think about the following scenario. Your car broke down, and you're going to have to take it to the shop for repairs. So there were two conditions. In one of the conditions, the cost of repairs was $150, and they measured the cognitive ability of individuals by high and low income. And they discovered there was no difference in the performance or the cognitive ability of the poor and the rich in that condition. Now, the sample that they used had moderately rich individuals. Nobody from Wall Street participated in this experiment. They were too expensive to be able to participate. In the other condition, very similar, instead of the $150 of the repair cost, it was $1,500 to make the repairs. Now, in this condition, the ability, the cognitive capacity of the rich wasn't affected, but the poor's performance significantly decreased, presumably because they stayed thinking and devoting a significant amount of resources of their mental capacity to think about, well, right now they're asking me about this possible scenario, but this brings up the point, what happens if I get sick? And just thinking about these finances was enough for them to compromise their ability to make decisions in other domains, because all of a sudden they were now using all of their resources to think about the financial scarcity. Now, there are ways in which you can try to tackle this problem, but when you think about the way our brains work, there are two important regions in the brain that are crucial for this. One of these regions is the limbic system, which is the center for emotions. And it also encodes pleasure, and it also encodes rewards. And so this is the closest thing that you will have, or you will see that is closer to the heart. Now, emotions and reward are very much intertwined because they come from the same region in the brain. So when we have these hyper emotions type of activities, we see that they have a profound effect and they amplify the mistakes. Now, the other part of the brain is the prefrontal cortex, the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex in general. This area of the brain is the one that allows us to make executive decisions. And it's almost as if we have two different cells within our bodies, within our brain, that are in constant trade-offs trying to make a decision. When you think about amplifying these into emotions, we have to have emotions. We have to have passion for what we do. There is something called the Yerkes-Dodson law, which essentially says if people don't really care about an activity, performance is going to be low. So the fact that you're passionate about your jobs, that you care deeply about what you do is fantastic because it means that you're going to be a high performer. Now beware that if you put too much emotion, if you care too much, if there's nothing else in your life except that focal point that you're looking at, you will be using almost nearly 100% of your resources for that activity, which will compromise your decisions elsewhere. So many of you will know this phenomenon as the choking under pressure because the emotions are so heightened to the point that you're not longer able to perform at the same level. So one thing that you can do with yourselves and with your clients is to establish these trigger points and stick to them. Make it easy for them to visualize. They have difficulty in making decisions. They navigate through the process of getting complex information, but it's easier if you explain ex ante what are some of the range patterns that you're able to tolerate in terms of activities. What are the things that are going to trigger an action in what you do? This is important because in what we do, we have to execute self-control to achieve a goal. When we started looking at how do our brains work for goal achievement, there were two big theories. One of the theories stated that self-control or goal achievement is like a resource, that once you know it's a resource in your brain and you access it, then you get more motivation. And if you engage in that action and you start to pass the first part of the test, if you engage in achieving that goal, you get more motivation. And the heightened motivation helps you to be able to continue to exercise self-control. Now, if you're like me, you're probably going to relate to that and say that is true. Now, the second theory is completely opposite and contradictory. And it states that self-control is like a battery, like your cell phone battery. Once you start using those resources and they are finished and they're done, then you're no longer able to exercise self-control. And this might be the reason why you have been fantastic today, but today when we get to the cocktail break, you're going to feel that you're entitled to get more than one drink because you have been good the entire day. Now, if you can relate to that, if you're going to put that in practice, you will see that both of these theories make sense. So how is it possible that they both coexist? So in the work that we did in the lab, we discovered that these two were not necessarily two separate theories. They were the same theory. And they're extremely important because it means that you have to exercise enough motivation, enough self-control, enough ability to keep on going to be able to generate traction in your motivation. But you do not want to do too much to the point that you're exhausting those resources. Right? This is the reason why most people give up on the New Year's resolution. 80% of Americans give up on their New Year's resolution by February 1st. Because we go from 0 to 200 miles an hour and we have nothing in between. So we set up ourselves to fail because we're trying to do too much. So there's a lot of power in trying to achieve small victories. Celebrate and savor small victories and try to keep yourself engaged in that zone that resonates with your own abilities, your own motivation. I want to leave you with this concept of neuroplasticity because this is what gives us hope. It essentially states that neurons that fire together, they wire together. It's a basic principle. Now, the brain does not discriminate if the habits are good or bad. That is a human nature thing. That is something that we place on our activities. The brain only knows that things that fire together wire together. This is the reason why the habits are so sticky. And this is also the reason why trying to override bad habits is very difficult. So after a bad breakup, you frequent the same places, and your brain immediately associates that with something of an action, and that triggers pain in the brain. So here, the neuroplasticity essentially tells us, if you want to create new habits, try to make sure that you pair those with things that are beneficial and that create good. And if you're trying to break a bad habit, make sure that you disassociate these things. And there's this beautiful thing about learning through the process of pain and reward in the brain, which is the basic principle of economics. Thank you for your time, and enjoy the rest of the meeting.